Welcome back. This is Chris Toy, your Boomer Tech Guide, and today we are going to make egg rolls and spring rolls. So one of the things that people sometimes wonder is, what's the difference? Well, in China, there's no such thing as egg rolls. So all these rolls are actually called spring rolls, and they are made in the spring during Chinese New Year. So egg rolls are kind of like a Chinese American adaptation. Also, in kind of today's use, egg rolls tend to be larger and they're filled with a meat and vegetable filling, whereas spring rolls tend to be more delicate and are usually just vegetarian. But, you know, you could kind of mix and match. So today we're going to make egg rolls with some ground chicken and vegetables, and then we're going to make some vegetarian spring rolls. And I'm going to be sharing an idea that my wife Joan came up with for turning egg roll wrappers into spring roll wrappers. So why don't we get started? Our ingredients, if we kind of go over them, we're going to use these egg roll wrappers, and you can get these right in the refrigerated section of your grocery. We'll have some scallions. We also are going to use some shredded cabbage, sometimes known as coleslaw. You can shred your own, or you can have the grocery, the bag. You can just buy that if you would like. And I'm also going to shred up some carrots for a little bit of texture and color. For the egg rolls, we're going to use some ground chicken. So I'm going to start off by preparing the filling for the egg rolls. And it's really just a really quick stir-fry process. So what we'll do is we'll put some flavoring in, and I'm going to use my favorite, some ginger and some garlic. And I'm just saving a little bit of the garlic aside for my spring rolls, just in case you're wondering. And what we'll do is we're going to put in a very little bit, probably like a tablespoon of oil into my preheated wok, and we'll just turn that right on medium high. So we'll get that so that the oil is going to heat up, and we will, here we go, that's the ginger, here's our garlic, we'll just put that in together. I'm using my knuckles against the knife to make sure that I'm nowhere near that sharp edge. So we'll put this in. This should sizzle right away. There we go. So before that gets too hot, what I'll do is I'm going to put in about a quarter pound of this ground chicken. You can use ground pork. You could use ground beef, shrimp, lobster, whatever you'd like to do. Just chop it up. So this will cook pretty quickly. So that's going to infuse the flavor of the ginger and the garlic. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. This is my favorite way to add salt and pepper, is this everyday seasoning. I'll probably put in maybe a quarter of a teaspoon, not a lot. We don't want it too salty, but do that to taste. And the reason I'm not adding soy sauce is that We want this to be a relatively dry mixture, because if it's soggy, what will happen is the moisture will dissolve the wrapper. Here we go. And again, that's on medium-high. So that chicken is cooked. And what I'll do now is I'm going to add some shredded carrots. There we go. I'll just put these guys right in. We're just going to soften those up a little bit. And to that, I'll add my shredded cabbage for coleslaw. I'm going to remember to save some for my spring rolls. So I'm just going to soften this up a little bit. I don't want it to be really soggy. So I'm going to turn this heat down now. And we're going to take this filling out. We're going to let this cool off just a little bit. Just to make it easy for us to handle it in a minute or so. So there's our filling. It would be tempting just to try that filling. Right. So while that's cooling off a little bit, let's go over here and let's check our oil. We're going to deep fry these. And here we have, this is my larger 14-inch wok. And I've got about maybe an inch of oil in the wok, and I'm going to put my chopstick in. And what I want is I want the chopstick to bubble. And you can kind of see that that's happening. I've got to turn it up a little bit. I'd like it to bubble a little bit more. You don't want the oil to be too cold, because the egg roll will sit in the oil too long. And you really only want to, believe it or not, you only want to have that in the oil, the egg roll in the oil, for between 5 and 10 seconds. So that's heating up nicely. All right. So while that's heating up, let's go over here and let's mix up some duck sauce. And the duck sauce really only requires 3 ingredients. And the 3 ingredients are applesauce. So we have some homemade applesauce here, some crushed pineapple, and some balsamic glaze. So let's do this. So in this instance, I'm going to put in equal parts of duck sauce and pineapple. small can of pineapple. We'll just mix that together. And to that, I'm going to add a tablespoon of balsamic glaze. And we'll just mix that together. So if you don't have balsamic glaze, you can use a mixture of brown sugar and cider vinegar. Is really good. Or red wine vinegar would be pretty good as well. If you don't have applesauce, you could puree up some pears or peaches, even grapes. There you go. So that's ready. So our oil is heated up, so that's good, bubbling. So let's take a wrapper. So this is just pasta. And what we'll do is we'll take 2 or 3 tablespoons of the filling. We'll put it right across the center. I know we're missing out on baseball season, but I'll use a baseball metaphor to remind myself how to do this. So I'm going to, this is the shape of the egg roll. And what I'll do is I'm going to paint around the bases with 3 fingers. The water is the glue. Then I'll take first and third and I'll just spring them together right over pitcher's mound. They can overlap like 1/4 of an inch. Don't overlap too much or it'll shorten your egg roll. And then I will take home plate, I'll bring it up behind pitcher's mound, give it a little tuck, and then we'll roll that right up. I'm going to make sure that second base is nice and wet, because that is where the egg roll will seal. All right, we'll do that one more time. You want to make sure that you only get 1 layer. They tend to stick together. So here you can see I have 2 layers. All right. We'll take a couple tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, right across pitcher's mound. Second base, first and third, pitcher's mound right up, and we'll roll that. So we've got 2 of these guys. So let's go over here, check this again. Bubbling, you can see the bubbling, that's good. So what we'll do, before we put the egg roll in, we're going to pat it, we're going to flatten it a little bit, and we do that so that when I go to turn it over, it doesn't try to roll back over. So if it's a little bit flattened, it'll be easier to get both sides fried. So here we go. We're going to slide one in, and you can see that it just starts bubbling right away, and that's what you want. And so just like a pancake, you look around the edge, and when the edge has turned light brown, it's time to turn it over. So that was probably about 5 seconds. And when you turn it over, the second side takes even less time. So we'll pull that right out. And this half moon rack is really great. What it does, you can see it, is it lets the oil drip down back into the wok, and it also keeps it warm. So I put the second one in. It's turned brown around the edges, so we'll give it a turn. You don't have to use chopsticks if you don't want. You can use tongs. 2 forks. All right, and then we'll just grab this guy, and you can see, I'll turn him over so you can see. So that cooked really nicely. So when I serve egg rolls, what I like to do is I like to cut them at a 45-degree angle. So you can see what happens is they make a great scoop. So let's try this one. It's really hot. It all is. And so you scoop that. Yum. Fresh and tasty. But we're not done yet. But wait, there's more. So let's let this rest over here. So I promised you a hack. And normally, thank you. Normally, you have to buy the spring roll wrappers separately, and they are very thin. They're almost like phyllo dough. But what we found out is that if you take a stack of wrappers, I'm going to take 3 here. Take a stack of wrappers and run them through the thinnest setting on a pasta roller, they actually become spring roll wrappers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off about 1 inch of this so that it fits here. And this is on the thinnest setting, and we have 3 wrappers. So what we'll do, I'm going to make sure that these aren't folded back. Here we go. We're going to put this right through. And you can see that we have 1, very thin, 2, and 3 wrappers. So what I'll do now is I'll cut these into squares. But before I do that, because I don't want them to dry out, what we'll do is we'll put the filling together for the spring roll wrappers. So remember what we said is that spring roll wrappers are more delicate, and you really only use vegetables. So we'll start off with just a touch of oil. There we go. We'll turn this heat on. Good. And we'll do our smashing again. Chop that up. Put that right in. We're not going to put in our meat. We're going to put in our cabbage. And I'm going to put in a few scallions slivered up. Just stir. So if you wanted to add a little protein to this, you could crumble up some tofu. If I were going to use tofu, I'd use some extra firm because it has less liquid. Remember, you want this to be pretty dry. And maybe a little bit of salt and pepper. Let me shut that off. Smells good. So I'll let this cool off a little bit. And while it's cooling off, what we'll do is we will cut our spring roll wrappers into squares. And the easy way to do that is simply to fold down so you get a 45-degree angle and just slice again. So you can see when you roll out the egg roll wrappers, you'll get twice as many spring roll wrappers. So instead of 3, we have 6. But they're going to be a lot smaller. Spring rolls tend to be appetizers. So here we go. It's the same way, just on a smaller scale. So there's our baseball diamond. We'll take probably just maybe a tablespoon or so right on pitcher's mound. Let's paint around the bases. Make sure second base is nice and wet. First and third, right over. Home plate, up to second base, pitcher's mound rather, and then we'll roll it up to second base. And you can see the difference in the size of these. Let's do one more, just so you can get the idea. You don't want to overfill these, because the dough is pretty tender. But you can almost see right through the dough. You can see the pattern of the cutting board. There we go. Up, tuck, and roll. All right, let's do this. So let's make sure. So you really want to make sure this is nice and warm. So, yep, see it's bubbling. That's what you want. And by the way, bubbling is probably around 340, 350 degrees. If it catches fire, it's too hot. So flatten these. We'll just slide those right in. Slide that one in. By the time I put that second one in, that first one, you can see it starting to turn brown around the edges. So we'll just turn that over. See, it's a good thing we flattened it because it does want to flip over. And then we'll do this one here. There. This one, whoops, see, this one flipped over. I wasn't firm enough with it. There. Right. So here's, this one's done. This one's misbehaving. I'll just put him in there. All right. So, spring roll. Oh, no, spring roll, egg roll. So I'm going to try this spring roll. Whoa, that's hot. Really hot. I'll give this a slice. Yum. This is the best part of teaching cooking. So here's our spring roll. Yum. So that's it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.